Hello, everyone. I'm Corey Andrew Powell, and it is an absolute honor to be joined today by a man who is considered the greatest male diver of all time. I, of course, believe that myself too, Mr. Greg Louganis. And Greg won gold medals in the 1984 and 1988 Summer Olympics on both the springboard and platform. And to date, he is the second diver in Olympic history to sweep the diving events in consecutive Olympic Games. Now, Greg is also an activist for the LGBTQ causes and many more, and he's also an author and motivational speaker. So, Greg, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. Well, listen, before we get started, I am going to fanboy out a little bit because, I watched the 84 Olympics and I watched the 88 Olympics. And literally in the 80s, for me, at that time in 84, after I saw you dive, it was like I loved Madonna, Michael Jackson, Prince, Mary Lou Retton, and Greg Louganis. Those are my five.
Oh, I'm flattered.
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, it was really great to watch you and your moment there at that time. So, but before we talk about your new course, which is part of your motivational speaker series, your new course is actually called Finding Your Rhythm. But before we get into that, I do want to talk a bit about your legacy, your backstory, which really made you the icon you are today. Now, people don't really realize, I guess, how different the world was 1980s versus now for gay people. But if you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit about being a gay athlete at that time and some of the fear you had with being, I guess, exposed by the media.
I always wanted my diving to be about the diving. I felt that if I came forward with my sexual identity, I was out to friends and family, and people who were close to me, people in USA Diving knew about my sexual identity. So, my sexual preference. And so, it was just not, I was encouraged by my agent, said, okay, keep the gay thing, not be so open about that. Because the concern was, commercial endorsements, people wouldn't want to work with you, and, I'm sure it did cost me, potential sponsors. And so, that was the concern. I justified it in the way that everybody's entitled to a private life. And so I just, maintain that. And also back in those days, the sports reporters, they were actually very respectful. In this day and age with social media, we are in so much in people's lives, and in their personal lives. So it's really kind of a hard line. But I was just, I just didn't discuss my personal life with members of the media. It was, I wanted the focus to be on the diving. So yeah, it wasn't a real warm and welcoming atmosphere to be open and gay. I was the diving team is a really small team, and so when we travel internationally, they'd have meetings that I wasn't invited to. It was who was in the room with the fag, and it was like, you should, my feeling was, okay, you should be so flattered.
Right. Right.
But, it's just like, that was an issue. And really, a lot of people say that, they try to identify that as homophobia, but, in meeting up with a lot of those, those guys, it was more about jealousy than it was homophobia, because I was winning at the time. So, I don't know. I think to a small degree it was homophobia, but, it wasn't a real welcoming atmosphere during those years.
Yes. And then you compile that with the fact that the epidemic for HIV and AIDS was sort of just beginning to infiltrate the news cycle and just every day our psyche. And I can remember the hysteria of like the dynasty kiss. With Rock Hudson and all that, and people didn't know like if you could be in a room with a gay person that you might like implode or something, right? It was just a bunch of silliness to a degree, but then you did have a very real Um, I guess you had a real moment where you disclosed your HIV status at the time, which was definitely such a trailblazing thing to do. That was like, I guess, 95 is when you actually did it. So it was past, I guess,
Right.
your Olympics. But still, it was a pretty bold thing to do. I mean, what
Well,
made you make that decision?
I knew that it was my next step in my journey because I was doing a play. I was doing Jeffrey in New York at the Minetta Lane Theater, and my character that I played, Darius, I was able to kind of live out my fantasies and face my fears because Darius was out and proud and gay pride parades uh, and he was in Cats. He was a cast member in Cats, and but he also dies in the play, and his spirit comes back, and he tells the main character, I felt was a very poignant moment, is to hate AIDS, to tell Jeffrey to hate AIDS, not life. And so that was kind of my journey. And then, doing the play for 6 months, I went to a friend of mine, Robbie Brown, and I said, I want to write a book. Because with my HIV, I felt that not many people knew about my HIV status. There was still so much stigma surrounding HIV. And, like some of the, mentality across the country, especially in the Bible Belt, was, oh, it's killing the right people, IV drug users and, prostitutes and gay men. And so, there was just like you said, it was a mass hysteria. And also the reality of it was we were going to memorials every weekend, several memorials in a weekend. And so, and you just heard all these horror stories. So yeah, so there wasn't a whole lot of compassion. I do remember that when I came out, I actually was pointed out to me way after the fact, because I don't read my press. But one thing I learned was that they were trying to take my medals away from me because
Oh,
because
wow.
I competed in Seoul, Korea, which they had a travel ban surrounding HIV. So had they
Oh,
known my
right.
HIV status, I wouldn't have been able to compete at the Olympics.
And that is
Um,
the one where you hit your head on the
that's what hit
springboard,
my head, right?
which terrified me, by the way. I was like, Lord, he is not going to come out that pool. I was, I mean, yeah. And so you bled in the pool. I think that was the controversy
Well,
as well.
that's the speculation. But when you get an injury like that, you have the impact and the injury, especially on the head. It doesn't bleed right away. It's not just it takes some time because like when I got out of the pool, I was holding my head. I went around the corner to my coach, and then that's when he noticed a little trickle of blood running down,
Right.
and so he pushed the blood back up into my hairline. So as we passed the Chinese, because he didn't want them to know that I bled
Yeah.
red.
Um, well, the
Yeah.
show must go on. I mean, you are a trained actor, so
Yeah,
all aspects.
and see that's where that's where the chorus is so important to me, finding your rhythm, because that's how I train. I train from the inside out. And one of the things, I started dancing and doing acrobatics when I was a year and a half. I was performing on stage when I was 3. And so what happened was I had my costume. It was the day of the rehearsal. Have my costume, so I have a top hat, and I was given a cane. So some of the choreography changed, was adjusted. And so what my teacher did, she played the music. She said, "Okay, and do the routine fluid." Put the music on and left the room. As a 3-year-old, my interpretation was, okay, imagine myself doing the routine and making it fluid, making all of those transitions. And so it took 4 times. And then I found her and I said, okay, I made it fluid. And she came back and she turned the tempo up to make it faster than what I would be performing. And so she said, make it fluid. And she played the music and I said, it was fluid. And she said, okay, you're ready.
Wow.
And
That
so,
fast.
because at 3 years old, had I done the routine over and over and over and over again, my muscles would have been, so fatigued, I wouldn't be able to perform. So that is how I learned visualization.
You almost, in that regard, I guess, even to simplify it more, it's almost in a way like there's no one way that people will learn and adapt to something. So in your case, you sort of had a system. You created a system in which you learned that routine quickly. But apparently that sort of process for you carried you all the way through all your successes up to being the greatest diver in the world, basically.
Yeah, because like the towards the end of the 70s, in the late 70s, the sports psychologists started coming around the pool and saying, "Oh, have you tried visualization or mental imagery?" And I'm like going, "Duh, doesn't everybody do that?" I
Right.
thought,
Yeah.
as a 3-year-old, your perception doesn't go much beyond yourself. And here I had all of these years of practicing this, whether it be a dance routine, gymnastics, diving. It all was connected because I just thought that's how you did things.
And today you see that's like mood boards are important, are big now, and all kinds of visualization apps and things, right? That's like a big thing today.
Right. And the thing in working with elite athletes, working with the various people that I work with, CEOs and all of that, dog agility athletes. The one thing that was interesting, because I thought, well, the way that I learned this process was, okay, visualization and then relaxation, breathing exercises and relaxation, being aware of your body. And then working with people, I realized, oh, no. You have to learn the awareness, body awareness and relaxation and the breathing exercises first. Then you can layer into the visualization, and the visualization games that I give in the course have absolutely nothing to do with how you're going to use the visualization, because it's all about having fun, playing, being playful, tapping into your adrenal response in a roller coaster ride, and tapping into the feelings of baking cookies with somebody that you love, and the textures and smells and what you hear, what all of you utilizing, incorporating all of your senses, because that's what true visualization is the experience. And the true experience, the more real you can make that experience, the greater benefit you're going to have in your visualization work.
I think one of the biggest problems with that, though, for many people is that we sort of get in our own way. We are the ones who are the doubters the most, right? We are the most doubting voice sometimes in the conversation. And so I think through exercises like what you are sharing, and tell me if this makes sense, you're almost flushing that negative voice out because you're replacing it with what you just mentioned, things like sensory, texture, sound, sights, emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that becomes more of a positive experience versus you like just beating yourself up over and over again for things.
Right. Because when we start visualization work and we're told we're supposed to visualize, you're supposed to relax, you're supposed to breathe, you're supposed to do all of these things, and then we're always concerned, am I doing it right? Is this right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this right? Is this right? Is this right?
Right.
But if you approach it as a game and you don't take it too seriously and you practice those elements, then you start developing this awareness of, oh my God, I have this incredible sense of smell. So, that triggers a feeling, a thought, it gets into your body,
Mm-hmm.
or an adrenal response that you can raise your body temperature just with your thoughts, just with your mind, and, and activate those things without judgment, because it's a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that many people are sort of, I think we feel confined to the consequences of our past, so to speak, right? We are not living in the present. I think that's a part of it as well. Beating yourself up over what you did 10 days ago or 10 years ago. So, and I've had, in these conversations I've had with successful people, CEOs, what I find is a common denominator that I love is accountability, right?
Hmm.
Like the moment that they accept, okay, I did that. That wasn't the best idea. I'm going to move forward now and try not to do that again, and now replace it with something better,
Right.
more positive. And I seem
Yeah.
like that feels like as a part of your course as well.
Yeah. And also, I mean, with the kids that I work with, it's just like if you feel off balance, smile. If you are feeling stressed, get back in touch with your breathing. And if you're really super stressed and you're tense, dance.
Mm, yeah, that's
Take
a
it
good
off,
one.
dance.
Yeah.
Because then that way it moves that energy.
Hmm.
Because what we're doing and we're doubting ourselves, we're blocking that energy.
Hmm.
So how to
You
free
know,
that energy up for full expression? Because
mm,
if you think about it, and it's interesting because I did some thinking about this. A dive takes less than 3 seconds. In that 3 seconds is chaos. It's a free fall, total free fall. And in that 3 seconds is your creation. So it's, yeah, and that's what peak performance is all about. That's, I was so grateful that I had diving as my sport, because in a 3-meter springboard competition, I had 11 opportunities to practice peak performance, to create those 3-second creations, less than 3-second creations. And then once that creation is done, it's like a snowflake. It can never be reconstructed, except it's visually on film. But even on film, when it lacks that energy, then if you're present, it's like going to a live theater event. That's so totally different from seeing something on the screen that you see over and over again.
it's funny you bring up the what you can do within 3 seconds because when Christine, my associate producer, talked to Beth and we connected everything and we were like, "Yay, we got Greg! He's going to do our show." She shared in our little marketing group a GIF of you. That's animated GIF of one of your dives,
Yeah.
and we were like, how can he do that in such a quick amount of time? Like we literally were just talking about how many turns you made. I think it was like four, maybe. Is that like the
Three and a
one
half.
three and a half?
Yeah,
So you're almost at a fourth full rotation
yeah,
as you go
yeah,
into the water. And we're like, how do you do that within those few seconds? But the way you just described it, it's almost like it's a metaphor
yeah.
for maximizing an opportunity in whatever
Yeah.
time you have. That's pretty much what I just got from what you said.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, it is rhythm. Everything has a rhythm. Comedy has a rhythm. Drama has a rhythm. The diving board has a rhythm. You just have to listen to it and pay attention. Music, poetry, it all has a rhythm. And tapping into the correct rhythm, allowing yourself to tap into that the appropriate rhythm. That is what success is all about.
I guess it's more about having a full contented life once you, I guess, make the right decisions about how you want to live your life. I think so often people don't make the decision to be happy. And I think that sounds a
Mhm.
little Oprah-ish, right? Maybe. But I think you have to make a decision to say, I don't want to be in this state of flux anymore, or I don't want to
Right.
be miserable anymore. So what can I do, right, to change that?
And see, the thing is, a lot of times when we start saying, "Oh, I should do this," I mean, I just made a post on this. Don't should on your life. Is that
That's great.
don't should on your life, because oftentimes when I find that I'm thinking, oh, I should do this, I should do that, those voices are not mine. It
Mm,
was oftentimes it really is my parents' voice or an authority figure, or maybe, a fan makes a random comment of what I should be doing, and so it's not really authentically me.
mm,
Where is Greg in this, in
right.
those shoulds? Is that my voice or is that somebody else's voice?
Mm. Yeah, that's a big point too, because I just mentioned how we are sometimes our own worst enemy with that, but there are
Right.
also the outside voices, and that does include very often family, and they can be the worst sometimes. Quite
Yeah.
honestly, people who know you the best, can be the most critical. Who do you think is the ideal person to take your course?
It ideal person, the younger the better, actually, when you think about it, because a young mind, I mean, I was 3 years old when I learned, visualization, because I had an active imagination. And so tapping into that. But really, I mean, it's gonna help you in anything you do, because you're always confronted with challenges, and you can experience those challenges in many different ways in your imagination. So then you're more prepared and able to make the adjustments necessary, not overreacting or underreacting, but being able to be present, being able to do the visualization, let it go, and enjoy the experience.
Well, I will make sure that everyone who listens to our podcast and watches our podcast will have the link where they can go and find out more about your course, Finding Your Rhythm. And we just really appreciate your time being here today. And again, for me, it's an honor because you also are associated with another one of my favorite memories, which is my grandmother, my late grandmother, who passed about 20 years ago now. She was not very into sports at all, but those '84 Olympics, prime time, that was her thing. That was our thing. And so she got to see you dive, and she'd be like, how did that boy do that? So my memories of like the '84 games, you're just a part of that as well. So just thank you for being you. And I appreciate you being here today on Motivational Mondays.
Well, thank you. That's such a beautiful share. Thank you very much.